on this connection. Cool. Hi, Elena. Okay. I'm not sure if you see me. I don't see you, but all right. Yeah, I see a chat here. Okay, she said hi. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming here. This is the first session of Flow Talks. And really my goal is after I finished my training, I would like to be able to practice speaking more about flow, but also share what I learned. That way it's not only that I'd be able to share what I learned, but also actually it gets really embedded into my system. And I feel like what we've learned during the course is so transformative, and I'd like for people to learn about these things, and maybe it'll transform aspects of your lives too. So that's the idea. And I think some of you already know about this project that I'm building, which is called Chasing Flow State. It was initially just a passion project, but now I want to take it seriously and make it what my life is about. So yeah, let's just go ahead and start. All right. Flow. So the main researcher who researched about flow is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. During those times, their focus was more towards abnormal psychology. People are more, even until now, the focus is more about mental health, mental problems, abnormal psychology, something like that. However, later, I forgot the year, Martin Seligman, he was the one who ran the Psychology Association. He's an American guy. Then he worked with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and they worked together and focused more on positive psychology. Okay, hang on a second. There's a couple of people who are... Okay, so I'm just going to continue. So they wanted to focus more on positive psychology and happiness. What is happiness? It's like an elusive, feeling or state. So that's how kind of flow started. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi did his research around the world, and he asked a lot of people about happiness, what makes them happy, what was the time in their lives where they felt very happy. And most of them talked about when they were absorbed in an activity that they were passionate about. They felt challenged. They felt like optimally challenged. They felt satisfied. It was not easy, but there's a little bit of struggle, but it made them feel like they get in the zone because it's a little bit higher than their skill level, whatever it is that they were doing, but they trust that they're capable of doing whatever it is that they're doing. So I will explain, you will understand this a little bit more as we go along through the content. But this is his description of what flow state is. So it says, being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved and you're using your skills to the utmost. Do you guys have any questions? No. So, well, I'm going to be asking questions. You don't have to answer, or you can just, if you want to share, you can share, or you can just think about it. Think about the last time when you felt like you were in flow, where you got lost in the moment. There was loss of self-consciousness. You were so absorbed, engaged in a task at hand. You lose yourself in the moment, right? Like this critical thinking part of our brain shuts off. You just forget about everything, but you feel like you were performing at your best. But then there was a sense of ease. There was a sense of effortlessness. Maybe you're writing your journal, or if you're a dancer, maybe you're creating a choreograph, or if you're a yoga teacher, maybe you were just like not conscious about yourself, but you were very in the zone of what it is that you were doing. Or maybe you're running and you forgot about how tired you were because you're kind of like this floaty feeling. So think about those times and think about what you were doing. So if you think about it, it felt kind of like a mystical experience. You know that it's happening to you, but you don't know when it's going to happen next. So a lot of people think that flow is like a mystical experience, that it's hard to get there because you never know when it's going to happen next. You don't know how to get there reliably and consistently. But when you're there, it feels good. All right. Okay.
Yes, definitely. For me, I also have this flow states when I'm painting, So I get really in the zone and I forgot what I'm doing and I'm just very concentrated in that. And yeah, it's really nice.
What are other activities that gets you in flow?
Dancing, but like without a choreo, like
Yeah.
more like a free flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Okay. So, who does anyone want to read this? This is also Mihai checks at Mihai. And I think this is very important that we kind of like understand what it is so that it's not elusive. It's not like um flow is a subjective experience, but it's nice to be able to really have a solid understanding of what it is. So does anyone want to read this? No. Okay, I'm just gonna read it. Okay. So here Mihai checks at Mihai was talking about what flow is in a more narrative way. So he says, contrary to what we usually believe, the best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing time. Although such experiences can also be enjoyable if you have worked hard to attain them. The most moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult or worthwhile. Optimal experience is thus something that we make happen. For a child, it could be placing with trembling fingers the last block on a tower she has built, higher than any she has built so far. For a swimmer, it could be trying to beat his own record. For a violinist, mastering an intricate musical passage. For each person, there are thousands of opportunities and challenges to expand ourselves. So what he's saying here is that usually the best moments of their lives is not when we're relaxing, but when we're trying hard. When we're engaging ourselves in a certain challenge where we feel like we're stretching ourselves, but we trust that we have the skill to be able to meet the challenge. That's kind of like what he's saying here. We have this, we feel satisfied that, let's say you're a runner, you're running 50 kilometers trail run. At that time, it's suffering. If that's something that you like, at the time, you're probably suffering. You know that you're really pushing yourself and stretching yourself. But after that, you feel absolutely satisfied that you've just proved to yourself that you've done hard things. And I think that's when you feel like, wow, that was really good. You feel fully satisfied of yourself. You stretch yourself. So that's kind of like what he's saying here. Anyway, I'm not going to go back there. So there are characteristics of flow. Again, at any time, feel free to ask questions so that I know that it's not like just me talking, that it's not boring. I want this to be interactive. Or maybe if you have a question later, go for it. Okay. So there are descriptions of the characteristics of flow. When you're in flow, there's absorption. So you're engaged in a certain activity or engaged in yoga, painting, writing, dancing. You're fully absorbed. There's effortlessness. Like when you're dancing, because it's free flow. You just go with it. There's no rules you follow. There's loss of self-consciousness. Most of the time, I don't know about you, but most of the time we become very critical of ourselves. We're constantly judging ourselves. We're constantly, oh, should I do this? Oh, is this right? If I do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like so much noise inside our heads that it actually causes friction. And instead of us being able to perform at our best, we hold ourselves back because we're so busy thinking about this critical thing or have critical thoughts of ourselves. But when you're in flow, you lose that. There's loss of self-consciousness. You don't think about yourself. You're so engaged in the moment. Time dilates, either time slows down or goes really fast. The world melts away. You're optimally challenged. This means that whatever it is that you're doing, you're being challenged optimally. It's the right challenge for you. It's not too high that it overwhelms you, but it's also not too low that it bores you. It's just hitting the sweet spot between anxiety and boredom. So that's what it means by being optimally challenged. You're using your skills to the utmost. The world melts away. I'm going to explain this more a little bit as we go along, but I'm just going to read through this. The world melts away. It's an autotelic experience. that means the action is the end in itself. When you're climbing, at least when I'm climbing, even if I don't reach the top or I don't like send, just the action, that the act of climbing is already the reward for me. I don't have to, or running, for example, just being able to run is already rewarding for me. I don't have to hit a certain time. It would be nice if I hit a certain time. It would be nice to finish, but I don't get so distracted about the goal. I'm so more focused on the actual thing that I'm doing. So that means it's autotelic experience. It's autotelic. It's intrinsically rewarding experience. So you're not, if it's extrinsically rewarding, if it's extrinsically rewarding, that means, let's say you run, you want to hit the finish line and you want to finish a marathon under 4 hours because you want to win, just an example, $5,000, right? Your motivation is extrinsic. It's based from the outside. It's not from the inside. Flow, when you are in flow, the experience is intrinsically rewarding. Your motivation is intrinsic. You just want to feel good. You just want to enjoy it. This is just, you're doing yoga because you just want to do yoga. It's just absolutely enjoyable for you for no reason. You don't get paid for it. There's, like, it's just an enjoyable experience. So that's kind of like what flow is. Do you guys have any questions? Nope. All right. So we'll go through the 9 dimensions of flow, or kind of like being able to understand what happens when you're in flow. How can you get there? What are the things that you can tweak so that you can get in flow? So we're going to breeze through it quickly, and then I'll go one by one. So 9 dimensions of flow. The main thing is challenge, skills, balance. So we're going to go here. This is the challenge, skills, balance scale. Now, what does this mean? So the main thing about flow is that if you want to get in flow, you need to engage. Oh, wait, do I have questions here? Okay. If you want to get in flow, the main thing is to engage yourself in a challenge, in a task that is challenging for you. So, for example, there's a challenge. This is the level of the challenge. This is your skill. If it's at par with each other, like, okay, then it's not challenging, no? The idea of the challenge skills balance is you need to engage yourself in a task that is, the challenge is a little bit higher than your skill level, so that you're using your skills to the utmost. When the challenge is a little bit higher than your skill level, it forces you to focus. It automatically forces you to focus on the task at hand because you know that you have to stretch yourself, right? The arbitrary number is 4%. So you have to engage in a challenge that is 4% higher than your skill level. So it's hitting the sweet spot between anxiety and boredom. Eventually, the more you engage in this challenge, this is a challenge level, the more you engage in the challenge, your skill goes higher. It's not going to be, it's only going to be challenging in the beginning. The more you engage, the skill level, it goes high. Bam, it's not going to be flow anymore. You need to, again, raise the level of the challenge or raise the complexity of the challenge, your skill level goes high. So if you keep raising it 4% every day, maybe not every day, up to you. When you look back, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm so far from where I started, because you just constantly raise the level of the challenge. This is why flow is highly tied with peak performance, optimal performance. It's also highly tied with self-actualization, which is about being the best that you can, being able to, how do you call this? Like use or get to your fullest potential. So self-actualization is at the peak of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Not sure if you're all familiar with that. So hierarchy of needs, the psychologist Abraham Maslow, he has a hierarchy of needs where before you can think about your goals and dreams and stuff like that, first you want to think about your physiological needs. Do you have a house? Do you have food? La la la. Is that once that's taken care of, the second bit of the hierarchy of needs is love and belongingness. The third one, I forgot what the third one was, but the tip is self-actualization. After self-actualization, then maybe you get to self-transcendence. But we focus on self-actualization. It's going to take a while to get transcendence. Anyway, am I going too fast, or is everyone good? I need to hear from you guys. Tell me. Okay. We'll continue. Again, at any time, feel free to ask questions. So this is the challenge skills balance, right? This is where you're in flow. If the challenge is a little bit high and your skill is just below the skill level, just below the challenge level, so you need to keep pushing it. Maybe another example would be in climbing, which most of you know I'm a climber, so it's just easier to use an example in climbing. So in climbing, every route has a difficulty grade. Mostly if you have been climbing for a while or you're a newbie, but you're kind of like familiar about climbing, the grade, you can start with 6A and goes up to 9C. 9C is just like the best of the best in the world. So you're a new climber. You climb this grade there, 6A, 6B, 6C, 7A, 7A, 7B, 7C, something like that. You warm up on a route that is 6A. In the beginning, the challenge skill level, that 6A is a little bit higher. Your skill level is here. So you go through a struggle. You're still struggling. Every single move you make, it's a struggle. You're thinking about your move. You're thinking about, you're not in flow. Because you are very, you have this flow it goes through a flow cycle. There's a struggle phase. In the beginning, you go through the struggle phase. The struggle phase is about saying yes to the challenge, saying yes to the struggle. You have this mindset that, okay, I want to get better. I want to be optimally challenged. I want to continue to push myself, stretch myself. I don't want to stay where I am, where it's comfortable. I actually want to be a little bit uncomfortable. I want to be good at piano. I want to learn a new language. At that time, in the beginning, you're going to go through a struggle. Why? It's loading phase. You're loading a new skill. You're loading a new language. You're loading new whatever information, skill acquisition. When you're trying to do yoga, let's say you're learning Ashtanga, which is a little bit hard. Every single move is just exhausting. You don't have the stamina. It's struggle. But if you're the kind of person who wants to do hard things, you constantly want to stretch yourself. So you say yes to the challenge. You go for it. And so, but you go through the struggle phase. You've constantly practiced, like, every single day. You practice your sun salutation every single day. Bam, bam, bam. Eventually, the skill gets so embedded into your system that it gets to a point where you don't have to think about it anymore. It's part of you. It's so deeply embedded into your system. It becomes part of you. It becomes who you are. So then you go through this release phase where you can relax your mind. You take your mind off the problem. You need to, let's say you're learning, we go back to the, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what's a good example for everyone. Let's say learning a new song in the piano. You're practicing every day and it's just working so hard to try to really get it into your system. You're doing all those salutation. After that, you need to go for, or you're writing an essay or an article and just trying to get the words to put them on paper. It's just such a struggle. It's hard work. Or you're trying to learn more information so that you can actually write what you're about to write. It's a struggle. They're struggling. It's very uncomfortable mentally, intellectually. Okay, now you're loading this skill. You need to get out of the situation, relax your mind. That way it can, seep into your system. You need to kind of like relax. This is why it's called release phase. Release, get it off. Eventually, for example, when we have a problem, this is why it happens like at night. Gosh, I can't think of like how can I solve this problem? I can't think of a solution. Well, just sleep on it. Just sleep. The following morning when you wake up, somehow things come together. Somehow things click. There's pattern recognition. Somehow you find connections with disparate ideas. And I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I do it this way. Maybe I do it this way. Something like that. So you need to take yourself out from the situation. And then when you go back, you realize, wow, I'm actually in flow. Words just come to me. Ideas come to me easily. Wow, it's more seamless. I'm not struggling. I'm not going through like this. It's not grit, Grit means like, oh, like this feeling of like trying so hard. And when you try way too hard, that it's actually not an enjoyable experience. In flow, the idea is it's always about, regardless if it's challenging, regardless if you're struggling, you still find it enjoyable. It's really all about enjoyment. It's making this an enjoyable experience. Then you get in flow. So in flow, I said here, alpha theta state. So alpha theta state is what happens in our brains and in neuroscience, what the brain waves in our head. When you're in flow, you're in the alpha theta state, where you kind of like dream state. You're relaxed, your mind is relaxed, right? But you're not asleep. It's still active, but you're relaxed. There's trust in yourself that you're capable. There's self-efficacy. That means you trust that you have the skill to handle the challenge. And this state, flow state, is an expensive state mentally. So you need to go through recovery state. You recover. Let's say you run. You can't run 50 kilometers per day. Every week, for example, you need to go through this cycle where, okay, you need to have, it's kind of like this idea where if you want to become a peak performer, you can't peak perform every day. If you're peak performing every day, then it's not peak performance, right? Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think my internet. Can you see me now? All good? Okay.
Yes, nice to have you back.
Okay. And five people. All right, let's go back. Let's see. Where was I? I was talking about peak performance. Yes. If I'm too fast, let me know. Ask questions at any time just to make sure that you are able to process the content. Sometimes I go too fast and I get too excited. But you're just like, I'm so passionate about this thing. Where was I? Yeah, peak performance. So if you're peak performing every day, that means you're not peak performing. because it's peak, right? So how do you handle that? We call it more optimal functioning and peak performance. You're functioning optimally every day. That would lead you to your peak performance. And then you go through deep recovery. So you need to recover. You need to take care of yourself. So you need to take care, you need to set your environment in a way that allows you to perform at your best. Environment includes your relationships, your friendships, whatever content you consume. Do you journal? Well, like all these kinds of things. Do you take care of yourself? Do you eat well? Do you sleep? Sleep is very important. Do you get a massage? Whatever, like stuff like that. Whatever it is that you that allows you to perform at your best, like your deep recovery protocols. You need to have that so that bam, you can again function optimally every single day. You have peak performance when it matters most, and then you go back to the cycle. So you need to understand that there is a flow cycle, that it's not going to be good all the time, but you want to being able to understand this, or having this at the back of your head. You can look at the situation and see, okay, where am I right now? You won't be like easily discouraged or feel like I feel so low, la 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 la. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a new skill that I'm trying to learn. Oh, this is a new role I'm playing at this new job, whatever it is. It's just natural. It's part of the process. That's who we are. We go through this. So then you can kind of like play with a situation, that you feel empowered, that okay, there's these things I can control, I can play around with. How do I do this? Right now, maybe I'm still in struggle phase. I need to walk away from this problem for a little bit so that my mind can relax. And then bam, you get in flow. Then you recover. All right. So let's go back to the challenge skills balance, because this is very important. So here, we were talking about the challenge skills balance earlier. So this is kind of like what we call the flow channel. So you see, if the challenge is too low and your skill is high, you relax. If the challenge is low, your skill is just here, you just feel apathetic about it, or you're bored, or just way too relaxed, then it's useless. You're not optimally challenged. If the challenge is too high, your skill is here, then you worry, then you feel anxious. If you're optimally challenged for the level of the challenge and your skill hit the sweet spot, this is why you get in flow. This is how you get in flow. Do you guys have any questions before I continue?
No, all good.
All good.
In this moment, yes, I'm trying to connect this, for example, because I told you earlier that I get in flow when I'm painting. So I can relate that to the yoga practice and the dancing practice, but with the painting it's a little bit harder to connect because I have no skill level, and I guess I don't know. So I'm just trying to connect with this, because when in the movement I see very clearly how to the skill level and all this that you were explaining, but not so much in the more painting or creative activity kind of thing, kind of arts and crafts, let's say.
So in the painting or whatever arts and craft, it's more like relaxing for you. It's not,
Yes.
yeah, but still you get in flow.
Yeah, at least what I consider to be flow. Maybe I don't even know.
Well, it depends, like for here. So this is another thing that another chart that we're looking at. So this is more towards this bit is more about talking about motivation actually, but I want to go through this just so you can kind of like have an idea. I think for painting, maybe there is no challenge for you because it's just play. It's just completely play. There's no challenge. So you can still get in the zone. But you know what? I'm gonna get back to you on that one because I'm not too sure. That's a very good question. But in terms of like flow and tying to performance, it's more towards challenge skills. So anyway, let's say, so I have some notes here on this bit. Now, in order for you, one of the times where I think a couple of months ago, I just felt like absolutely challenged in every aspect of my life, that I was here. I was distressed. I was distressed. The challenge is too high. The challenge is too high. And then I have to perform. The challenge is too high. So I need to perform high as well. But then I'm distressed because it was too much. I can handle it. I didn't have any trust with myself. So the stress that I had was unhelpful stress. It was uncomfortable. It didn't cause arousal. You need to be, in order for you to get in flow, like we connect it to the challenge skills balance. In order for you to get in flow, or that's saying yes to the struggle, right? Saying yes to the challenge. The saying yes to the challenge has to arouse you. It has to be like optimal arousal. You want to move. It jolts you to action, you know. Do you have any questions for now? No questions? Oh, good. Okay. So I just want to make sure. All right. Anyway, so let's say what would be a good example for this? Do you have any questions about this chart? And then I'll just go for that rather than.
I don't have any questions, but for me, it's really interesting because just recently I start understanding this idea of helpful stress, like something that motivates you. So it's interesting for me to see this in this graphic, like how, because stress can also be a bit positive sometimes to motivate you to do things. So I just thought it was interesting for me to look at this in a visual way.
Yeah, yeah. So this is where the thing, eustress and distress. So let's say your life is easy, you have no challenge, you're relaxed. And I think it's good. I think it's pretty good. But but the question is, do you want to stay relaxed or do you want to peak perform? Then we're going to need to understand this. That is the question. Depends on what your values are, what you find important. I imagine most of us here wants to peak perform. This is why we want to know, like, okay, how can I feel my best, then perform my best? Then you want to tap into flow. How do you tap into flow? First, challenge skills balance, right? But in order for you to be able to say yes to the challenge, you need to be optimally aroused. So there's this word optimal. Optimal is very subjective. What is optimal for me may not be optimal for you. For me, if you ask me to, like, I don't know, what would be a good example, but I find I always get engaged when we're going to talk about flow triggers in a little bit, but I'm just going to go through this now. Optimal challenge for me is when there's a certain level of risk, a certain level of complexity, certain level of novelty, and creativity. Those are my flow triggers. But number one flow trigger for me is risk. So the risk doesn't have to be physical risk. It can be a social risk. It can be creative risk. When you put yourself out there, there's a certain social risk because you can be rejected. When you put yourself out there and when a lover declares his or her love to this other person, you somehow get in flow because there's a potential that you can be rejected. When you put yourself out there, let's say you're a yoga teacher. You're a new yoga teacher. You just acquired these new skills. You had your training. You put yourself out there in front of the class. There's a potential that people may not like your teaching. there's a potential rejection. That's a risk, right? It can be like rejected. But somehow it also gets you into the now. You feel pulled in the moment because you feel like, okay, there's a certain level, depending on your personality. But for me, I absolutely find risk, a potential rejection, gives me a certain high because it forces me to perform at my best. Then it's not about their rejection, that it's not so much about their potential rejection. It's for me, it's about being able to perform at my best in spite of all these challenges. I like it. It just makes me feel good. At the end of the day, when I review, I'm like, well, okay, I felt like I gave it all I got, regardless of what the reaction is. It doesn't matter to me anymore. So then I'm more intrinsically motivated. And so then my happiness is not dependent on the circumstance, on the outside, on whatever validation I get from the outside. It's more about the validation that I give to myself. So, and I'm not sure if that's resonating with you, but I'm just trying to kind of like, yeah, juxtapose this, put it on top of like a personal experience. So it's kind of like easier to understand. And so the understanding as well what your flow triggers are matters most to so that you can play around with those. You can use those as levers, you know. Any question?
No, but after you said about the creative, like the risks, I made an association with the painting immediately when you say about the creative risk, because every time that you put the brush on the canva, it's a risk of messing it up. So there is like some sort of trigger there, you know, that maybe it's a little bit more conscious and it doesn't really matter. It's not, I'm not gonna break my arm or something
Yeah,
dangerous, but I could miss the painting out at
yeah,
any point. So there is a risk there as well.
yeah. Nice. Yeah.
That I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's very good. That's very good. Yeah. Um, so anyway, looking at this chart of the performance and challenge, understanding kind of like what are your flow triggers to get you optimally aroused, where it forces you to focus, where it forces you to perform at your best. So here, when the challenge is like here at this bit, and you're not really, you don't have to perform at a high level, right? So it's a little bit playful. You're just a little bit playful, but you need to raise the challenge so that you can get in full a little bit, kind of like that. One of the questions that during our course, one of the questions that I was saying was that like, I talk about this, at least before I learned so much about flow, it was more about, yeah, you know, when I have to perform, when I have to perform at my best, I shut everything off. I just go for it. There's like grit. You're pushing. I'm like, ugh, I just need to do it until I get to the deadline. Then I'm like, and I told Cam, the one who runs the course, I'm like, yeah, I do that. I use grit because it's reliable. I know that if I do that, if I push myself and hustle, I know I can get to, I can perform, I can get the result that I want. And then, so why do I want to be in flow? And he said, yeah, you can do that. Up to you. The question is, number one, is it sustainable? Number two, do you want to do that all the time, every day? Number three, what is the difference between flow and using grit? He said, there's a relief after. You'd feel like, oh, I'm glad it's finally over. And I'm like, you know what? That's exactly how I feel every time. And I don't want to feel that way anymore. I want every single moment to be enjoyable. Another example that I could use, and I would like to use your examples or like what your situation is, and explain to you how we can map it out in this chart. Like feel free to share if you have questions, and then we can play around with it. For example, when I was building my company Podcastmate, like I'd like to say I was absolutely performing at my best. I was hustling. I loved it, but it was a hustle. Because it came to a point where it's just not enjoyable anymore. But I was gritting through it. It's so the enjoyable bit, which is the main thing about flow. I didn't have that. And so once it's finally over, once I finally sunsetted that project, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy that it's finally over. And I didn't want to have that same feeling when I'm building chasing flow state. I want every single moment to be enjoyable so that it doesn't feel like work. That way, I'm constantly motivated to work on it every single day, every single moment. Even if it's hard, I still find it enjoyable. It's kind of like that. And I'm optimally aroused. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to, so if you don't have any questions about this, I will go back to the 9 dimensions of flow. Okay, so other aspects of what's happening when you're in flow, there's action and awareness merging. What does that mean? We talked earlier about loss of self-consciousness. We talked earlier about absorption. This is what it means. Action and awareness merging, concentration at the task at hand. This is what this means. So for example, if you map it out, I'm just going to read through all of this. There's clear goals, unambiguous and relevant feedback, concentration on the task at hand, sense of control, loss of self-consciousness, transformation of time, and autotelic experience. Do you guys have any questions? No? Are you sure? Alex, Anita, any question? No question? Yes or no?
Sorry, no questions. No questions.
Pretty clear? Okay. All right. So 9 dimensions of flow. Clear goals. Why is clear goals important? Why do you think it's part of, like, I think before we go back to this, I'm going to go through the flow triggers. This way it'll give you a better idea. All right. Flow triggers. So in total, there are, I think, about 22 flow triggers. There's psychological triggers, social triggers, environmental triggers. Yeah, psychological, environmental, and social. 3. They categorized it to 3. I'm going to focus on psychological or individual flow triggers. So number 1 flow trigger is curiosity, passion, and purpose. If you think about it, most of the time when you get in flow is usually when you're doing something you love, doing something you're passionate about, doing something that is purposeful to you, or doing something that you're curious about. Like, what was a thing? When was the last time you followed your curiosity? If you're curious about something, or you're passionate about something, if you're in love with someone, this is a new love. Somehow you get so focused on that person, right? Like it pulls you in the moment. It feels good. Like you get in flow. Like it's just like, it's an amazing feeling. It's like you get a dopamine high. So that's one flow triggers. Every time I study about flow or peak performance, I'm like always curious about flow. And so it's easier for me to focus because my passion is there, my curiosity is there. Number 2, there's autonomy. So what does this mean? Autonomy means being able to, let's say you're a driver, being able to drive or take the right or the left, having the autonomy to be able to drive the car however you want it, which direction you want to take. You need to get to point B, but getting to point B, like filling the gap, the chasm between point A to point B, you have the autonomy to how you're going to fill that gap. Are you going to walk? Are you going to build a bridge? Are you going to swim through it? Are you going to fly? Are you going to run? So that's what means by autonomy. If it's at work, For example, if you are, I don't know, like an IT person or whatever, you're given this project, you have the autonomy on how to get you given the autonomy, the trust as well, to complete the project however you want it to be done, as long as you complete that project. And when we have autonomy in our lives in whatever it is that we're doing, you know, like it feels good because it feels like, okay, like I have power, you feel empowered. Another flow trigger is complete concentration, reducing cognitive load. Like they tie together. Risk, novelty, complexity, unpredictability. Most of this novelty, complexity, and unpredictability, let's say you're a surfer or in action adventure sports, mostly this is why most action adventure athletes understand flow better, because there's a lot of flow triggers that show up. Curiosity, autonomy, complete concentration, risk, novelty, complexity, unpredictability. Let's say you're a surfer. You love surfing. You want to get better at surfing. You have full autonomy to ride whichever wave you want to ride. You're going to have to concentrate. You can't really think about your problems while you're there, right? Because easily the waves is too strong. It's going to drown you. There's a risk, an actual physical risk. You could drown. There's novelty. Every single wave is not the same. There's complexity. Complexity, regardless of which wave you're going to do, you're going to have to, I don't know that much about surfing, but it's a very complex sport. You need to know how to paddle. You have to be strong enough to know how to paddle. You need to be able to read the wave. You need to have the perfect timing to pop up and stand. When you pop up, you need to learn how to ride the wave so that you don't fall, so you actually enjoy it. There's unpredictability. You never know what's going to happen next. So you have to concentrate, have to pay full attention. This is why when you're in flow, you're surfing, you're in flow, time seems to slow down. Somehow you're able to make microsecond decisions. Everything slows down. And the decisions you make, it's not even like using the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex, which is the critical thinking part of the brain, where we make decisions. When you are in flow and there's high risk, there's high novelty, there's high complexity, you have to be completely, you have to concentrate completely. Let's say when you're riding the wave, you can't really think, oh, do I do this like this? Oh, do I do it? What should I do? No, you don't have time. You need to be able to make a decision, microsecond decision. And that decision has to be reliable because it's very unpredictable, right? So what we use when we are doing that, when we're able to do that, when we're in flow, we call this embodied cognition. That means intuition. So there are two cognition we have, which is rational and embodied. Most of the time we use rational. We're rational human beings. Well, presumably. Presumably we're rational human beings. But the rational, in neuroscience, they call it system 1 and system 2. System 1 is the intuition, embodied cognition. System 2 is the rational cognition. When you're in flow, you do not use system 2, which is rational. You use system 1, embodied. It's intuition. That's why there's effortlessness. There's effortless effort. That's why it feels fluid. Why? In system 2, if you're using rational thinking, it's comprehensive, but it's long. It's a long process. What should I do? Oh, what about this situation? What about this? It takes a long time. But if you are in a challenge that has all these triggers, you need intuition to be able to make microsecond decisions, and it's reliable. And you need to also be able to develop those intuition, right? So let's assume that you have a lot of experience, you have self-efficacy, you have the skill. And so we're able to develop enough intuition to be able to ride the wave. Am I making sense, or is it too fast? All good? because I feel like I'm bam, bam. Okay. So there. Now, another flow trigger, deep embodiment. So deep embodiment means you need to get your mind and body to work as one, like in yoga, for example, when we're practicing yoga, when we're doing surfing, rock climbing. You need to have like the body awareness, the mind and body connection, make it one so that you're not kind of like, there are times when you don't feel like connected with your body. I don't know about you, I absolutely feel that. If there are days where I don't practice yoga or I don't move, I feel like there's like a disconnect. And I don't like that. I need to be able to take control of my body and have my body move it, uh, or make the reaction time between my mind commanding my body to move, make the reaction time really, really short so that it's like one. So that's what means by kind of like deep embodiment. Rock climbing is requires deep embodiment. Surfing requires deep embodiment. Yoga requires deep embodiment. There's immediate feedback. So we go back to surfing because we're using that example now. Immediate feedback. What does this mean? Immediate and relevant feedback. In surfing, you get immediate feedback because if you don't make a decision and you do it right, you're going to fall. Bam, immediate feedback. Clear goals. Your goal is to be able to pop up and ride the wave. And read the wave, pop up, paddle, pop up at the right time, and then ride it. Challenge skills balance. You can't just take every single wave that you want. You need to find the right wave that is within your skill level or a little bit higher than your skill level. And there's creativity or pattern recognition. When you are engaging in a task or a challenge where you've practiced it when you have been surfing for like 2 years, for example, you surf every day for 2 years, you're able to recognize patterns. Okay, maybe a better example would be yoga. As a yoga teacher, if you've been doing yoga for a long time, sometimes you've already had so much experience that sometimes you don't even really need to plan a class. You can just show up and then run it because there's pattern. You've already recognized patterns. Oh, I'm gonna do like cobra pose. After cobra pose, maybe we'll do child's pose immediately, or maybe we'll do a downward dog. Like it's a pattern that works, right? And yeah, that's it. So those are the flow triggers. And these are the neurochemicals that show up in our brain depending on what the flow trigger is. I'm just going to run this through really quickly. So the neuroscience of flow, we don't have much time and I want to respect your time as well. All right. So all these 5 neurochemicals show up in our brain when we're in flow. Norepinephrine, dopamine, anandamide, serotonin, endorphins. These are all feel-good neurochemicals. This is why when we're in flow, it feels good. It's addictive. We want to do again whatever it is that we did that led us to be in flow because it's a great feeling. So yeah. I'm not going to talk too much about that. It's going to be a little bit more sciencey, but I was just going to show you this. All of these, each and every neurochemical, we can get that artificially through drugs, cocaine, whatever. But if you inject it into your system, you can't do it every single one of them all at once. So you're going to die. But when you're in flow, our brain creates this cocktail of feel-good neurochemicals. And this is why it's like rewarding. It feels rewarding. It feels good. These are some of the, I'm just going to run through this really quickly since yeah, These are some of the benefits of flow. At least from the perspective of performance. So all these companies did their studies on all these their employees, people who were in flow, because they've been trained to get in flow. So there's 500% increase in executives' productivity. That means you work 40 hours a week, but instead of working 40 hours a week, whatever output you can get, you can do in 40 hours a week. When you're in flow, you can accomplish it within 2 days. So imagine if you're constantly engaged in flow, you are in flow. If whatever it is that you need to produce when you're not in flow, that would require you for 40 hours, but when you're in flow, it would only require you 16 hours. That's amazing. It's around about 500% increase in productivity. There's 3 days of heightened creativity after flow state, based on Harvard studies. There's 490% faster skill acquisition. So when you're acquiring a new skill, learning a new language, stuff like that, when you think about your flow triggers, when you think about those nine dimensions of flow, you're able to acquire new skill. First, you need to think about, okay, is my passion, purpose, curiosity lined up? Something like that. Lastly, 430% increase in creative problem solving. So these are the benefits of flow. I think I have covered everything that I want to cover. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions? Anything?
Not really, but I just thought it was so. Sorry, you go for it, Anita.
No,
I
no.
already.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead,
I was
please.
just saying, I just wanted to say how interesting is it that our brain brings all these chemicals that are nice when we are in flow. I didn't know about that. So I just thought that was very interesting thing.
Yeah. I can continue to geek out about that. I think another, I guess, depending on how we go, I would really appreciate your feedback so that I could curate the content in terms of what is helpful for you. I think I haven't really shared that the idea of why I'm doing flow talks is because I wanted to number one, not everyone can afford to get flow coaching. It's a little bit expensive, but I wanted to be accessible for everyone. So I want to do these flow talks so that people can get this information. But number two, I want to build this as a course. I want to build this as a course and then yeah, make it something that people want to use so that they can kind of like understand in terms of peak performance and stuff. And yeah, I think that's it. Sorry, Anita, you were gonna say something?
Oh, yes, no worries. Yeah, so I have actually, I think I still need a bit to process the part of that graphic with the performance and challenge.
Mhm.
Maybe if you can go back to that. And until you go back to that, and do we get the recording of this session?
I can give you the recording if you like. Yeah, I'm gonna stop recording now.
Yeah, that would be okay.